What if I told you that not every thought in your mind is your own, that some whispers sound like you, but come from something far darker? The battle for the mind begins the moment you open the door to a thought. If you seek truth and long to guard your heart with light, let this journey not end here. Subscribe, not for mere content, but for the sharpening of your spirit. Let us stand watch together. There is a certain cunning in the way the enemy operates. Rarely does he storm the gates of the mind with a battle cry that would be too obvious, too crude. No, his craft is far more subtle. He prefers the art of the whisper, not the shout. His method is not to plant a glaring evil into your heart, but to sow a shadow of a thought so faint, so reasonable, that you mistake it for your own. He will not say, "Hate your brother." That would startle you into resistance. Instead, he will suggest, "Has he not wronged you again? Surely it's only natural to feel this way." He will not tell you, "Abandon all hope." No, he will murmur, "Things will never change. Perhaps it's better to stop expecting them to." These thoughts do not arrive with the stench of sulfur, but with the quiet, familiar scent of your own disappointments. The most dangerous thing about these whispers is how they mimic your own voice. They slip into the stream of your inner dialogue so seamlessly that you do not notice the moment your thinking becomes twisted. It feels like you. It sounds like you. And so, you welcome the thought as if it were an honest reflection rather than a foreign suggestion. The enemy's great hope is not to be discovered. He wants you to believe that every unkind notion, every bitter memory replayed, and every fearful anticipation originates within you. For if you think the poison is your own, you will never question drinking it. His whisper does not need to be loud. It only needs to be familiar. And once you mistake his voice for your own, he has already crept into the very seat of your reason. The mind is often mistaken for a fortress, a place walled off from influence, where thoughts are purely one's own and impenetrable to outside forces. But this is a dangerous illusion. The mind is not a fortress, it is a garden. It is not a matter of whether something will take root, but what will. For the soil of the mind does not remain barren, it invites planting, and the seeds come from two sources, heaven and hell. The enemy knows this well. He does not march in with banners unfurled. He simply drops a seed in passing, a small, unassuming suggestion. You are not enough. No one truly cares for you. What if everything falls apart? And because the seed seems so small, so reasonable, you allow it to remain. It does not bloom into despair overnight. No, it waits. It sinks its roots quietly beneath the surface, drawing strength from every unguarded thought and every silent agreement. But the enemy is not the only sower. The Spirit of God also plants, not with whispers of doubt, but with truths so simple and steady they are easy to overlook. You are loved. I am with you. There is hope. These seeds do not shout for your attention. They rest gently in the soil, waiting for you to water them with faith and guard them with prayer. The danger lies in believing the garden will tend itself, that by doing nothing, you will remain neutral. But the mind cannot be neutral. Neglect invites wild growth, and wild growth often bends toward darkness. The thoughts you entertain, the words you repeat to yourself, the silent reflections you allow to linger, these are the hands that either nurture heaven's seeds or give ground to hell's. The enemy does not possess the power to read your mind. That realm is sealed to him, known only to the one who fashioned you. But do not mistake his ignorance for blindness. What he cannot hear within, he observes without. He watches, patiently, attentively, like a hunter studying the patterns of his prey. Your words, your habits, your slightest reactions, these are his clues, the pieces of a puzzle he slowly assembles. He notices the way your mood shifts when a certain name is mentioned. He marks how your jaw tightens at the memory of an old slight. He observes how quickly you turn to distraction when silence grows too loud. From these fragments, he weaves a story about you, not a true story, but one he can use. It is not mind-reading he relies on, but familiarity. He does not need to know your thoughts if he already knows your wounds, and once he has learned your rhythms, he moves quietly, twisting what he has gathered. A passing comment from a friend becomes, in his whisper, evidence that you are unloved. A minor setback at work is recast as proof that you are a failure. He does not invent lies out of thin air. He takes what you have already felt and bends it just enough to make you doubt. The most effective deception, after all, is the one laced with a little truth. What makes this so dangerous is the subtlety of it. These thoughts seem to rise from within you, wearing the familiar voice of your own reason. You do not sense an attack because it feels like a conclusion you reached yourself. The enemy never announces his schemes. He lets you think the trap was your own doing. And once you claim the lie as your own, he has no more work left to do. If these words awaken something within you, a flicker of recognition, a call to vigilance, then pause. Share your thoughts in the comments below. For in speaking truth, even in a simple comment, we strengthen one another. Let this not be a solitary battle. Evil is a beggar at the gate, not a king on the throne. It cannot force its way into the heart. The door must be opened from within. No demon can plant a thought so deeply that it takes root without your consent. Their whispers, their suggestions, their half-truths, all of these are merely invitations. The true danger begins the moment you agree with the lie. It never starts with a bold declaration. The enemy does not demand that you proclaim yourself worthless. That would startle you into resistance. Instead, he offers a quieter thought. Perhaps I am not as valuable as others. Maybe I'm always the problem. The suggestion drifts into your mind like smoke curling around your reason. And then comes the critical moment, not when the thought arrives, but when you nod to it. The moment you say, yes, that sounds about right, the lie ceases to be a foreign intruder. It becomes your own voice. This is the power of agreement. Evil waits, not with a battering ram, but with a seed. It cannot force that seed to grow. It can only place it in the soil and hope you water it with your silent consent. For once you agree, once you repeat the lie to yourself and carry it like a small secret in your heart, it gains strength. You have given it permission to stay. Agreement changes the nature of the battle. What was once an external suggestion becomes an internal belief. The enemy no longer needs to whisper, for now the lie speaks for itself. You carry it forward without his prompting, feeding it with every fearful thought and bitter memory. And so, without ever forcing his way in, the enemy has taken ground, not by breaking the door, but by persuading you to open it. The mind is never idle. It is always at work, a silent loom, weaving the threads of your thoughts into the fabric of your soul. What you allow to linger in the quiet corners of your mind does not simply stay there. It shapes you. A fleeting worry, if entertained too long, becomes a permanent shadow. A small resentment, nursed in secret, hardens into a chain. The enemy knows this well. He does not need you to act on his whispers immediately. He only needs you to think about them. There is a slow poison in unchecked thoughts. They seem harmless at first. A brief indulgence in self-pity, a moment of silent envy, a passing judgment on another. Left alone, they appear to vanish. But they do not vanish. They settle. They take root. And though they start as mere notions, they grow into the architecture of your heart. This is why vigilance is not an option, but a necessity. The enemy's most effective work is not done with a shout, but with a suggestion. He does not drag you into darkness. He lets you wander there, one thought at a time. The mind, if unguarded, becomes a breeding ground, not for sudden violent sins, but for the slow-growing kind, the ones that seem almost reasonable. Discernment, then, is the watchman at the gate. It is the practiced habit of asking, where did this thought come from? Is this true, or does it simply feel true? For not every voice that speaks within you is yours, and not every idea that arises is innocent. If you do not question what you entertain in your mind, you will find yourself shaped by forces you never meant to welcome. And long before the soul falls, the thoughts have already built the path. Darkness has no substance of its own. It is merely the absence of light. The enemy operates in much the same way. His schemes are not built on true power, but on deception, confusion, and fear. He does not conquer by strength, he conquers by shadows. Like a thief, he works best in dimly lit corners, slipping his lies into your thoughts when your mind is unguarded and your spirit unfocused. But here lies his great weakness. The moment light is introduced, his power collapses. A single spark of truth unmasks the lie. A whispered prayer shatters the illusion. The enemy's strength is not in what he is, but in what you believe him to be. He thrives on your blindness, not his might. When a mind is rooted in truth, not mere facts, but the unshakable reality of what is eternal and divine, the enemy finds no foothold. His whispers fall flat against a heart that knows its worth, and his accusations lose their sting when met with the steady voice of God's word. Prayer, then, is not a last resort or a desperate plea. It is a floodlight. It drives back the shadows, not because it changes the enemy, but because it changes you. It aligns your heart with heaven, sharpening your discernment and reinforcing the walls of your soul. A praying mind is a watched mind, and the enemy cannot work freely where he is being watched. It is not the size of the darkness that matters, but the presence of light. A single candle holds more authority than an entire room of night. And so it is with the soul that clings to truth and prayer. The enemy may circle, he may whisper, but he cannot overcome what is already ablaze with light. So let this be clear. The battle is not won by louder thoughts or fiercer willpower, but by light, steady, unyielding light. The enemy may whisper, but he cannot withstand truth spoken with conviction. He may lurk in the shadows of your mind, but he is powerless against a soul that watches, prays, and stands firm. Your agreement with a lie gives it life, but your agreement with truth destroys the very roots of his schemes. Therefore, guard your mind as a garden, tend your thoughts as a watchman at the gate, and above all, flood every corner of your heart with the brilliance of divine truth. For where light abides, darkness does not argue, it simply flees. The enemy lurks in silence, but truth speaks boldly. If you would walk in the light and stand firm against the whispers of the dark, subscribe and join this growing watchtower of souls. Let your voice rise in the comments, not for noise, but for the echo of truth. Together we shine brighter.